you. Oh, yeah. But you did, and always so well. As I was walking here this afternoon, I started thinking about how everybody talks about colonialism now because that's such a big discussion. And we think about how many people must have thought about that issue, even though if they didn't have the word, including the Celts of Britain. There must have been many other people who said, those darn Romans, they bring their civilization and their Latin classes. And we have to wear togas. And, you know, it's so, and the taxes. God, did you see that? But this all took a very long time. And of course, their descendants have the joy of being aware of the fact that they have all those tourist sites, right? Based on Roman ruins, because all of us who've been there line up and take your tours because mugs, t-shirts, everything is available. I was there. I heart Rome. I mean, let's face it. Their time was there, and you think in terms of other parts of the Roman Empire, this was relatively short. They come during that, well, initially come during that first century after Christ and depart at least by the beginning of the fifth, and more of that as we go. So speaking of Romans and colonialism, and again, the demography, the study of population, and how they figure all of this is very interesting. And I'll say, I wonder sometimes how they derive these facts. But I'll also say this, you just have to read the next article to get another estimate. Basically, in other words, this is no guarantee that everybody would say, yeah, I got Roman citizenship, count me on your survey. These are rough, capital R, estimates of population, I would say. I think it's interesting in terms of those thousands of Romans. And we don't mean necessarily Romans as in central Italy so much as people associated with the empire. And you say, well, why would they be there? Well, why were all those Brits in India? Shoot, they were there running businesses. Yeah, making money. And they would say, oh, honey, do you have to go? Yeah. It's like, yeah, we got the big bucks to make. And of course, as we're going to see later, we got religious missionaries going by the droves later. So all of these people, once it opens up, especially in the south of Britain, yes, people associated with the Roman Empire are going to be coming in by the boatload, as we say nowadays. But all of that is to say that they are not all military. And as time goes on, the military forces seem to have been lessened. And you know why that is? Because anyone who studied all the places where the military, our military, not to mention the Romans, I mean, you don't go just to one place and say, well, we just won't be involved there. So we wish you all, they're everywhere, that we have vital interest. So that's true of the Romans as well. So I figure that part of the withdrawal probably has to do with the fact Not that we're going to make you veterans, but we're going to send you east. And you know what that means. We do not love Persians, and we're going after them. Because you think they don't suddenly stop. Oh, you all are so busy in Britain. We don't want to be a bother. We love you and we just want to share a border. And, it's just not that way. And then you say, what about those big blondes up north? And you know the kind I mean, Hans, Wolfgang, yeah, they're causing trouble too. So everywhere you look, there are other military needs. So when you talk about, what is it they always say now on the news? Resources. I'm not sure this Britain project always gets premier interest. So that's why I suspect, oh God, now this is one of those things they made into a verb. Prioritize. No, if you put that in a paper, I would send it back and make you redo it. That is not a verb. Yeah. And I don't, I'm just saying. Now, of course, if you are Roman, you got to have a tail. And they are not necessarily large, although many of you have been to the Museum of the City of London, which is fascinating in terms of its ruins. But in terms of how large these places were, and I've got a map to show you that will be amazing to me in terms of how they developed and in terms of the Romans there. And again, I ask you to think about, I don't know, British India, and think about the way the British felt there. We're British all the way. Because sometimes those colonials can be more British than the British, And sometimes when they came home in the late 40s, they were still pretty pumped up. Kenya and Africa. Yeah, those folks too. I mean, everybody, I guess it's because you're not there. And so it's like Rule Britannia and all of the rest. But I'm just talking about the whole colonial experience. That was quite significant from our sources. And of course, there are the Romanized Celts, the ones who begged to learn all 5 declensions. Yes, please, Master. Dominus, let me. I'm so glad I have the opportunity. Are they sycophants? Many of them kiss cheeks, yes, but also Celts of this sort. Don't you figure they can, as the Bible would say, know the handwriting on the wall? And they were the leaders in their tribal communities, their cultures. And so you sort of gravitate towards, can I be part of this? I've always dreamed of living in a town and having all my declensions, food perfect tents, or all of the things that many of us knew and loved as Latin scholars, thanks to the Jesuits. And yes, all of this is to say that this is a group that's fascinating because I was actually reading about India and the folks, who had led colonial India in terms of Indians. And I was going to say, I wouldn't want to be one of them when the British were ready to pull out, because it wasn't like the Indians were going to say, we love you and we appreciate you and we want to have a big appreciation day. Because, if you were a British kiss up, I think your time is pretty much finished up with them. Yeah. It's time for independence in many ways. It'll take a while to get them all out, but read about the Rajas and all that. That was kind of, they had a good run. But Gandhi took care of that. I'm sorry about getting off on Indians, but I think the comparison has some significance in this context. I mentioned the missionaries here, even though there'll be another talk about it, because they are such a major group, and you think even some of them are coming. Gosh, you think about maybe in the first or second centuries, and you think, well, they're not going. I mean, they're not on the ships. They're not saying, hey, you want to hear about, I'm part of a mystery cult and I would like to share my experience with you. We're having a conscious raising session, shipboard. Now, I think you were probably acting by subterfuge. I mean, if you had it even in your ID, but I think you would be clandestine, because in many cases, and this is what I read, I mean, people, the Roman authorities didn't want those people to be coming in. I mean, there's the cult of Isis, and many of these people were considered a kind of, shall we say, not supportive of Roman authority and not respectful. And so, do we want cult people coming to Roman Britain and saying no? And so you're just going like mild-mannered business types. Yeah, I'm just got some customers here I need to see. But secretly, you're a cult person. And do we have to deprogram people? Remember deprogramming in the day? But all of that is to say that it is very interesting indeed. You say, well, now I know about Christians. Yeah, but there were lots of others. But they're all going because that's what missionaries do. They go see about when you have these, what'd you say, markets or people are available, and you don't criticize their idols, but we got the truth. So you need to be with us. So they're coming disguised as businessmen or whatever, or maybe we work in defense contracts or the military establishment. You never know. But again, I'm thinking many of these people who were with these religions, including Christians, all groups that are, say, missionary oriented, were not like, I want to have a big meeting on ship and want to have a reception for all who want to hear about Isis and she loves everybody. She's our mother. No. I think we would do this clandestinely. Or as we used to say in old Rome, sub rosa. Yeah. So all of this then is a very important part. Now, speaking of gods, one would find interesting when one goes to Baal, and this is where I saw it. Did you see it too? The archaeological digs, and they would find this sort of thing. I always found that fascinating because I would think, how does she get associated with Minerva or Athena? I guess it's like what the religious anthropologists call religious syncretism. It's like, that's so much like the one we love. Gosh, welcome to our cult. It's that kind of thing. We have so much in common. Now, that probably doesn't work with your monotheistic religions. But in these groups that more the merrier types that say God here, God there, this particular individual, Sulis Aqua, the Romans say, oh, Minerva, you mean. And then, because if you're being a little subservient Celt, you're probably saying, oh, is that what they call them? Okay, we love Minerva. Yeah, I mean, you want to get in on the bandwagon with your new Roman friends. But But that's very interesting to me to think about, having seen this, and you will have that opportunity if you're there. And again, it was at least an archaeological project that went on for years and years and years in terms of digs and discoveries. And again, we can only hypothesize how it comes about that she's identified as Sulis, and then I guess the Romans decide it's Minerva, and people can say Minerva if you say so. Until then, when the Romans leave, I guess she can go back to original role. We don't do Romans anymore, but the influence of what we would call colonialism can be very, very significant. I think you will agree, because as long as they're there, we love you very much. And we just want to do, gosh, you're so great. And your Latin classes are fabulous. Gosh, could I get a toga maybe? It's that kind of thing. It's all of the sort of pushing. Oh, and how many of us have been here to Bath? And they always tell you, don't go in the water. It was not meant for a nice swim. It is nasty with a capital N. But that said, every time I look at this, I think of how much you can ignore all the buildings around it. Because you want to have some historical imagination of Roman times. So there's no cathedral, which is not that pretty anyway. It's for the Anglican Diocese of Bath. And because that didn't exist back then. So obviously, Bath's a nice town. I grant you that. But anyway, you ignore that. And then all the little statues that were put up in Victorian times, you ignore that. I know it. It's really, it takes a lot of work. Touristic kind of work, as a good tourist, you can do it and you understand, because to try to imagine what it was like, because all of those centuries of the baths, and think about how that was for the Romans and these Romanized Celts, because I don't think the Celts had it. Now, we got some great engineers, and we brought a lot of engineers over here to create those. And you know what happened when the Romans left? I don't think we need it anymore, because bathing is such a drag. Yeah, oh God, it's not good for your skin, all that bathing. But you're aware that sometimes they viewed the baths as places of corruption. Yes. So whatever the reason, anti-bathing or fear of virtue losing, the baths were allowed to die out. And to me, Bath is just a tremendous example of the power of archaeology and how they created this. And I would say, maybe I'm wrong, but I would say it was a major tourist site. Those the baths in Bath, as we say. There are other sites in Bath, and Bath isn't that far from London, but I think it's a great site among others there. But again, can you imagine how much effort that would take to create? I'm not an engineer. All I can do is just imagine. And again, without all the wonderful machines of today, we have a great school of engineering, and I realize Alabama has a smaller one. Yes. Not to be ugly. You all are wonderful people. If there's anybody, a UAH has one too, I understand. But which is fine, but this is the large one. Just saying, in case there's some confusion. So the idea is, way back then, just think about all the work. Lucky Ola's Celt said, gosh, we're here. And if you all want baths, we're here to help you. We love you so very much. It's hard to believe, but yeah. But again, Roman engineers had a lot of projects going on. Because if we're going to be here, we're going to take advantage of it. Because they had no idea, oh gosh, the end of the Roman Empire is coming to a country near us. And yeah, I don't think, when you develop these things, could you think about being, well, again, here I go back to India, sorry. But can you think about, say, you were there in 1940, a Brit, or maybe 38. Let's just go back to 38 and say, gosh, it's not that important because Indian rule here is almost over. So let's not kind of focus on anything. No, that's just not the way present day time works. Or, being in that particular space of time, you live for that time, assuming it'll go on. At least I would think so. There was this wonderful lady who worked at the museum. You may remember her. She used to greet us when we would come in. And one day she stopped me. This is years ago. And she said, I'm from Chester. Oh my gosh. I was very titillated because I said, oh my God. And she did not understand why I was so carried away. And I had so many questions. I wouldn't leave her alone. I think she lives on Armstrong, actually. You may know her. Yeah. That was Margaret. And she's from there. And I said, tell me, you are so lucky. And I don't know if she thought so. But this was a major Roman site, more or less, which was not discovered until the 20th century. And I don't know if it's done a lot for Chester tourism, but I think it has. Chester is around Liverpool, up in that area. And I mean northern, when I say northern, I mean northern in terms of the land that the British had, or rather Romans had control of. And Lord, when those archaeologists brought all this up, they got excited, as only archaeologists can do. It's not like they were going, oh, whatever. Oh, no. Oh, my God. Talk about all the archaeological conferences. And it was unbelievable because everybody began to say, what is this? What is this? And Chester is not a huge place. But when they found this, which I find amazing, it must have been after World War II, maybe. But they found it, and the British thought it was a military training center. And then, believe it or not, non-British archaeologists said, no, it isn't. It's a theater. Open air theater, Greco-Roman theater. Yeah. Probably cliff notes for that. Yeah. We know about Roman plays, and you're thinking, wow, they would take all these kinds of structures over there. Well, that's what these people say, and I found it interesting. Isn't that funny, though? You got the trains there. That does take take away from, I guess, the mood of the Romans. Yeah, when you see the trains coming. But I would assume that you see the larger reality of the structure, and you can see perhaps evidence for both points of view. But anyway, it's good for the tourist industry, and certainly the topic of some archaeologists when they get together about what it is. Another sign of, I guess you would say, continuing interest in Roman Britain. And to me, it's just remarkable that all this was found after all those centuries. And again, the speculation about, is this good for the Roman Celtic economy? Well, I assume it is. You know, you're bringing in people, engineers. I don't think you have to bring in any workers. I mean, you got plenty there. But it is very interesting to think of Chester being a center there, as Margaret would have told us, I'm sure. And again, for those who have not had Roman history, and I'm sorely tempted to have a class in it after talking to one of you, because we're thinking about, remember Domitian, how Tacitus, who is somewhat biased, remember he talked about his father-in-law Agricola and how wonderful he was. And he does not give a just the facts approach to the Emperor Domitian. He is rather rude. He says some unkind things. In other words, he accuses Domitian, the Roman emperor, of being hurting flies or killing insects, you know, a very disturbed person who eventually, brought to the sword. And Tacitus, who didn't like him because Tacitus says Domitian was jealous of Agricola's fame, and so, I know. So he recalled Agricola. And you say, gosh, Domitian wasn't nice, ratemyemperor.com. Yeah, he was really bad. He deserved to get murdered. Well, that's certainly what Tacitus thought. But again, are we getting a fair and unbiased view of Roman history? I don't think so. I mean, even some of the historians are saying Nero wasn't really that bad, just misunderstood. The next thing we'll have Caligula revisionism. I don't know. People will do a lot to sell a book. What am I saying? Yeah, we got to keep Amazon going. So yeah, as long as people will buy it, they'll come. Somebody will come up with a theory. He loved his mother very much. They said about that. So all of this is to say that after Domitian, I should say, will come what the historians, going back to Gibbon in 1776, man, you called the age of the 5 good emperors. And as Frank, you say they weren't that good, but they were good times. But some people used to say they were. What was it they used to say? If you were rich, white, and male. But by and large, this period involves the British occupation too. Because if you were in that period of Trajan, Hadrian, Marcus Aurelius, and in Roman history, and I'm kind of trying to tempt you here, we'll go into all of that. All of that is to say then that during the period of the so-called 5 good emperors, they decided we love expansion, but sometimes you have to stop. That had to be tough. And when you go to all these meetings and people say, oh, can't we go north? I know you're thinking about Scotland now and all the joy we have of those trips. But I think the Romans said, we have so many projects. As much fun as it is to fight against Celts and Picts and whatnot, we just need to stop. We'll keep what we've got. And we get so many letters of thanks from Celts. I think they're also known as sycophants. Yes, we know that word. So that's yet another famous tourist site. Go up there, but as I always say, don't wear anything nice and be real careful where you walk. Remember that going up to Hadrian's Wall, because I fell near there and it was not good. Oh, the sheep. Oh, I mean, if you don't like to hear bad, stay away from here because they are there. And these are some interesting illustrations of parts of it. It's amazing to me, all those centuries. Now, think about all those centuries that nobody cared. It's not like there was always some sort of North English archaeological society. I think it's fascinating how, despite what would you call it, just people ignoring it, that it was preserved, saved. So now, with all of this, Hadrian's Wall is now ready for the tourist trade. Yes, indeed. Mugs, t-shirts, in the old days, postal cards. Everybody wants to wish you were here on the Hadrian's Wall because Hadrian himself went up there. Yes. He came over there. He said, I really appreciate all y'all being here and keeping the guard. He said, well, it's a pleasure, sir. Looking for a promotion or raise. So, yeah, you can imagine having the visit of Hadrian must have been a very great event. If you'd been a young soldier up there, legionnaire, how great that would have been. Many of you, again, know this particular area of northern England, and it's a very interesting area, and I don't know how many of them are as interested as archaeologists and historians in that, but it became very important for at least a time. When you see this Roman fortress, which is near Hadrian's Wall, you know what I started thinking about, just being romantic one time. I just thought, I wonder how many young Italians were there thinking, it's not bad. This is a hellhole. when can we get back home? I mean, I love it. It's wonderful to be in Northern England, but you can think about those Italians. But then I guess if you're imbued with the love of the empire, maybe I'm being a little too melodramatic, but said anything, if the big T, Trajan, wants this, I'm here for the empire. It's all about the empire. Again, perhaps too romantic. Whatever the case, Hadrian's Wall becomes a very, very important symbol of Roman authority. Now, let's not forget our friends further north. I think it's about 100 miles. I looked that up and I thought, well, that's like here to Atlanta. Yeah, something about it, not very far, but strategically speaking, named after Antoninus Pius, one of the 5 good emperors again. The decision is, I know we need to stop, but maybe we can take a little bit more, but despite those nasty blackguards. So they built this, and again, those Roman engineers talk about getting plenty of work. The income is coming in. Can you imagine? And I don't want to speak of war profiteers. So I don't want to put anything harsh and judgmental on this. But I'm thinking some people must have made some big denarii. Yeah, because of all of this, the building projects. And again, there are still parts of it that remain. And it was begun in 142, and it must have lasted briefly, because you think, what's going to happen after Antoninus Pius? Well, some of you already know. We're going to be ready for the scene from, yes, Gladiator. Yes, Marcus Aurelius. And the idea, of course, it's been a good time, but those days are over. In any event, they will go back to Hadrian's Wall. And we'll talk more about what it all means. Otherwise, again, if you're ever thinking about roads, think an engineer. I mean, Huntsville, I give credit to Huntsville. Yeah. I mean, all of our wonderful engineering centers. And again, we see these people sometimes when we're driving and going slowly when we need to. And we understand that these folks are doing their work. But you just think about doing it back then. And aren't we thankful for technology? Yes. And the improvements that have been made. And I thought these were interesting. And I'm not saying it's original with the Romans, because I go back sometimes to the Persians, because they had much of this. Perhaps the technology, in a sense, developed, said we don't want to think about the roads either being created for the use of ordinary people, because they were mainly for the purpose of the military. So I think that would be a good point. We could stop and let people have a little break. And okay.
Look at the time.
Yeah, please do. And see, and to think about how much we owe engineers
So you
of all kinds. Yes.
8 minutes, 10 minutes?
That will be fine.
All right, how about, we'll start coming back about, 18 after.
Okay.
It's the new, warm and cuddly.
Yeah, the woman cuddly period. Yes, right. Oh, you didn't go?
I went to Loch Ness. I remember that mistake because it wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was on a cloud there in Scotland.
Lot, yes, yeah.
We went to Inverness. We went to. I
Lord,
remember the big castle on the hill.
I remember that too, because sometimes when the sun would shine, I'd say, and you see the sun this morning. Because it didn't come.
I still remember 20 years ago, there wasn't a cloud in the sky.
In Inverness?
No, it was Loch Ness.
God, man.
Years ago.
All right. Okay.
35.
That's right.
When I was in Scotland,
Yeah, there you go.
I asked you.
Big old arrow.
They told me, but I couldn't
Oh, God. Or big old arrow.
So
I say so.
they said,
Fire arrow.
so here's
So they would do is they put like 40 or 60 at a time. A box. You know, like rockets with little tiny feather things like arrows. And they're pretty effective. The sheriff takes 16 hours.
the rating.
It's a wood.
What they call
That would like see.
Yeah.
You got some land. That's green.
Yeah.
Very tough.
They use it for sling for the bow. And a gut. No. Spring.
She's certainly.
It's not a spring.
Yeah.
This whole thing.
Sling itself. I walked over there.
It's not limited. Saying about the good deal.
What I'm saying is.
Where he follows.
What is that? Gut? Yeah, but that's not supposed to make itself. Like coming in with the gut. Made out of gut. It was like roast or what was it? Throat.
No.
That manifestation of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if they use like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Breaking it up. I just wonder how long those ropes last. I wonder if they would rattle it off.
Somebody was important. Said the wrong phone. Yeah, no, Yeah, I know.
Turn, but,
Yeah, they have.
there was that little occurrence with, Herman the German, and the Romans.
They all.
We love Columbus, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So.
Well, they did slaves. Well, the economy was built on it.
Yeah, this is the same. I thought they were they knew.
Modern man really become,
The embassy, the
you look at this,
Yeah.
And black.
Oh, yeah.
The Roman rulers.
I would call Byzantium.
Yeah.
I would call Byzantium.
I like that shirt.
Yeah, wow.
They didn't have Rome.
Yeah.
They were split up.
No, they're in Paris. They're basically.
Yeah, but that was a long time ago.
It lasted a long time.
It was before they got sent to Paris. It's about 8 years ago. That's why I love it. No wonder all that things are helping.
Destination ready? So, yes, sir. Good luck. Danny, and your grandson, I'm ready whenever they.
She becomes a great thing in my life.
I know, I like that.
Let the A1 come from this.
St. Edward's, King Edward, King Edward, he graduated in.
Because you know, I started.
Okay, is everybody ready to get back to work? I can see you all are. No, no more coffee for anybody, okay?
You drunk enough, yeah.
All right. It's time for the return of the man, the myth, the legend. Boy, that was brief. But anyway, we'll let that go. Domitian would put up with that, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah. Thanks, everybody. And again, many of these pathways are familiar to you. And you can imagine in terms of sites of the Roman colonial world and how much this must have involved the Celtic people with the Roman authorities. And I assume that this went on during a great many years of Roman rule, because I can assure you, when it was over in terms of the building industry, building and development, and we don't need your services anymore. You were great when we wanted engineers, and we don't need your Latin teachers either. So you are washed up. So, but Roman roads are an important part of the culture, even though they are certainly not roads that would have affected us. And now let's hear about Diocletian. And again, when you are ready to do your list of Roman emperors, because yes, I know you can do the American presidents, and I'm proud of you. Perhaps you can do the maiden names of the first ladies and vice presidents. Ready to be
You could do that.
do on Jeopardy. But the idea is we can really separate the regular scholars from the brilliant ones in terms of who can do the Roman emperors. Okay, all the way from Augustus forward. But seriously, if you went to a Roman, oh, I don't know, history party or something, well, that's just some sick fantasy of mine. But if you're hanging out and somebody said, yeah, how about
toga party?
I know. Well, not. No, I don't mean anything. I don't mean any debauchery.
Oh,
I'm more. No, I'm not into being lascivious. I'm into knowing Roman emperors and people saying, "Wow, I am so glad to learn that." Not. But Diocletian is the one. Again, sometimes if you read a work of Christians, he gets a bad press. No, they don't say, but he meant well and he loved people. No, it's all or nothing. So it's not any kind of mixed message here. But as an administrator, and in history, sometimes we love administrators. And they say he's one of those Pentagon types, not so much, D-Day and all that, but he's just back there in the headquarters. But he got big and he became emperor. And it is said of Diocletian, and see, I use that word authoritarian. And people don't like that, but I guess he felt like the empire was falling apart, so he was not ready to do the last rites. And the textbooks always describe the tetrarchy, the system of having the 4 emperors, and you can see the areas they ruled over going from east to west. And you say, wow, I would want to have Paris and London. Would you? I don't think so. That is not the area that got the first choice. The idea of the tetrarchs would be there would be 2 principal emperors, and then the individuals who are the other 2 members, they would have to marry the emperor's daughters. And now you say, well, it was sort of kismet or it was fascination. I know. No, we're not going to do Rogers Hammerstein over this. Because this was strictly you are marrying the boss's daughter because we want to create a relationship. Just business. So there were 4 emperors, and you have one in the east, which you can see, and then he's got a junior emperor. Oh, Diocletian worked it out. Then he had a friend of his, named Maximilian, be the main emperor in the west. And then he had a junior emperor. So it never really worked. But I guess like many administrators, they love to work on those plans. Can you, pencil pushers, as they call them? I'm just saying. But that was called a tetrarchy. And then sometimes Diocletian, who actually was a peasant from what we call Albania now, would in fact travel around these areas and make the junior emperor run after him on his horse. Yeah, he was kind of like not sensitive about people's feelings, but they definitely had a hierarchy. And then under him, you get vicars. You notice the term diocese, which the church would take. The vicars would be under these emperors. And I guess the vicars had to do more of the work. Because I'm thinking if you're an emperor, you just run around, you wave, maybe kiss them. kids or something. I don't know, but the idea was the vicars then supervised the provinces, and there was a governor over each province, and you say, gosh, so there has to be a lot staff. Yeah, somebody's got to work. I mean, you're going to have retirement benefits, no dental care, but there's probably an enormous amount of bureaucracy. You say, who's going to pay for all this? Well, that's why we have taxpayers. So you say this can get expensive. Oh, say love you. I mean, we're just happy to pay. Aren't we worried about inflation? Yes, that is a problem. But since the government's not going to pay it, you are. We appreciate it. Rome loves you and appreciates all your contributions. And so it's not a good situation. And Diocletian meant well, maybe he didn't mean that well in terms of the Christians, but there are many stories about Diocletian's relationship to Christianity, but I'll save that and just note that that was set up in the late empire, and you think, gosh, that's after the 5 good emperors. Yes, but think how many emperors there would be after Marcus Aurelius. This could keep you very busy one weekend. Maybe after the Arkansas game, you can start working. I mean, all of the emperors, I mean, they would come and they would go. I mean, you know, we've had presidents with short terms. Think of Harrison. Remember him?
Yeah, sure.
Very short. But let's not get there. Let's just remember this was the period of Diocletian when it all falls apart. And what is, of course, to be understood is that by this time, the days of Roman Britain are basically over. Now, here's someone that history used to love, not so much anymore, because he was anti-Semitic. But I remember Constantine, he was just wonderful. That's what can happen to historical reputations. Yeah, if you last. Well, that's the heroic Constantine. And you say, what relation is he to Diocletian? I thought you'd never ask. Basically, Constantine's father was the junior ruler in the West. His name was Constantius. And you say, well, what connection did he have to Diocletian? Well, he went over to Diocletian's court and hung out and sort of like knew who to kiss up to. Cheeks were available. And I imagine Constantine had a lot of experience, military, and all the rest of it. So that's going to be very important, being the son of Constantius. And for our purposes, to make a long story short, Constantius died. And that's how Constantine became an emperor. Dad would have wanted it. That's what he would say, and sticking to it. And that's how he ultimately became the Roman emperor. There were some inconvenient parts of his story, but I think it was cleaned up. That's why we have history people on the payroll. Said, this is the way Diocletian would have wanted it. Well, I don't know about that, because, Diocletian got to retire. And I always think that is so wonderful. It's so great to retire. I love my retirement. But if you're a Roman emperor, it's kind of tough to get into that plan and the eye care, the dental. and all of that. And you're thinking, gosh, it's wonderful to be a retired emperor because Diocletian, not unlike Marlon Brando in Godfather. I mean, you have an estate and you're just there and you're thinking about all the people that you suppressed or mistreated, and you have your grandkids around you working in the garden. And I'm sure it was like that for Diocletian. But ultimately, he was content for Constantine to become the ruler after the death of Constantius. And of course, if I were to go out tonight, which I won't, into the streets, the mean streets of Alfred, and I know, about midnight, and ask any miscreant youth, oh, young fellow, can you tell me the significance of Constantine's reign? Well, they wouldn't hurt, but they wouldn't hurt elderly. Would hurt. No. They would say, sir, you need to go home. It's time for you to rest. Take a long, long nap before you come out anymore. But the idea is, most people would say he was associated with Christianity. And if you got that much right, I would give you the laurel wreath. Yeah. Because I mean, there are not that many who necessarily are aware of Constantine's fame. Interesting figure, though, that he is. And in fact, the assumption is that Constantine had some experience in Britain. Not a great deal, but certainly the troops of Constantius wanted him to be the leader, even though technically that was not really the plan in terms of the tetrarchy that somebody's son. The filth of nepotism. It happens a lot. Yeah, Junior says, Dad would want me to have it, you know. And that's the way it goes. But regardless, Domitian, the 5 good emperors, you say, but what happened then? A lot of problems, just a whole lot of problems. And people are going to decide, God, sounds like London, 1946 or 47. We've loved New Delhi. It's been fun. The years in India have been great, but we need to go home. They don't love us as much as they used to. And that's what happens in colonialism, and they don't go like throwing roses and we've loved you very much and all the greetings you know, and like good luck to you in Manchester and Liverpool. We wish you all the best. Yeah, I know. But the fact is that the withdrawal is not going to be pleasant or loving, but they know they have to leave because they have problems in the East. I've always thought that the Romans decided that it was easier for them to preserve their authority in the East, and the East was more valuable. So we let these territories go, and we wish you all the very best. I mean, it's not as if they were ready, these various Western areas, to protect themselves, because, of course, they are going to have many enemies. And I think, as Frank mentioned, these folks up north and to the west are just waiting I don't want to say like hungry vultures, but I will. I mean, it's like they want to be a part of the Roman world. I don't think so at all. I think they just like the land or
They wanted that Roman territory.
yeah. And I mean, it's not like we're jealous of your Latin and your togas and all the rest. I think they just want to take it over, and that's exactly what they do. And they're not saying, gosh, we love these baths they built. I mean, there's nothing like we might think about all the sites and all the things the Romans had. Oh, look at that aqueduct. Yeah. I mean, all of these engineering feats, all these roads, and I don't think these folks they were just fighting and taking. So again, I don't think this was all of a sudden. This is a gradual process of withdrawal. But when it happens, boy, it happens. And it includes much of the Western world. And I guess you say, stay in touch. You know how you say to people, we're fond of you. I'm sure there were British who said that to some of their Indian friends and said, it's been real. And we hope this is going to be a good experience for you, maybe, or maybe not. But that is the way. Now we get into the question of sources in terms of Picts and Scots, as they were called, over from Ireland. Why are they coming? Well, they were asked to. Really? Well, that's what they would basically see in terms of Angles and Saxons and so forth. Because what we're going to start talking about next time is what on earth are these folks from Scandinavia or Jutland, as you know, coming all the way down to Brit. What are they doing? Well, some said we got invited because the Celts, basically were having a hard time of the. This is not necessarily sounding right, but it definitely becomes very important in trying to make sense of what is essentially a dark period. It's not like somebody left a nice book and said, help, we've got a lot of problems here, and we could use some of you big angles coming in and get things straightened out. I mean, all of this is, again, I use the word speculation. It's very speculative in terms of how did all these people come in and take it over. And again, how did the Celts feel? Like, rape my invader? I mean, like, gosh, those Picts. But boy, those Saxons are really nice there. And it's like, how do you rate your invader? Which one is nice? I mean, they're all blondes and mean. They like to fight. So nobody is there and saying, we are here as your friend. You ain't heavy, you're our brother. I just can't see that. And the poor Pict, she said, or the Celts, you say, sometimes you can be a little nostalgic about the Romans. But, hey, they're gone. They're out of there. Because the whole idea of the Roman civilization is now the ruins of Bath or the Hadrian's Wall, and you understand none of these sites are, for intents and purposes, surviving. I should say Hadrian's Wall, not to mention the Antonine Wall, was never defended, was never the to defend the land so much as it was to say, this is where our empire belongs, do not enter. But let me tell you something, once those Roman troops are gone, everybody's coming and nobody's saying, oh, we better not go in here. I think this is someone else's property. I don't think the respect that we have for each other's property rights, I don't think existed. So boy, they were jumping those walls. And what became of them? Well, until the archaeologists came, they were gone, just like those Roman baths and all of the various other remnants of Roman civilization. So that is what we call the shadowy future. And shadowy because basically it's very, very dark. Because unfortunately, no Angles or Saxons, not to mention Jutes, ever came along and said, things are really falling to pieces here. But we're so glad to meet and befriend so many of you Celtic friends. Couldn't even control myself on that one, because you know that's a lie. Because, but even with that, I'm just saying that because the idea is, I guess the poor Celts are just saying whatever, because they are not in a position to have a lot of say so in the future of this Celtic society. And meanwhile, whatever happened to the Roman Empire in the West? Here it is. And you say, what are all those Germans doing in our empire? Yeah. And there's someone in here who doesn't need to be told about 476. She knows it and knows it well, being the scholar she is. But for those who may not become excited by 476, you will be after today. It's all included. You see him, Odoacer? He will become the new ruler by ousting Romulus Augustulus, the little emperor, the little teenage. I was a teenage emperor. And in 476, he is deposed, and this Germanic leader will take over. 476 is sometimes said, by the lay people, to be the end of the Roman Empire in the West. Okay, we'll let that go. I mean, do you have to know dates? It helps. Those of you who are especially gifted will know all of these, and you are to be commended, but don't condemn others, because some do not have your amazing mind. All of this various area, when I'm thinking of Tunisia, and you look, and there's all they say, gosh, we miss the Romans. Well, vandalism now. Yeah, that's little. Yeah, I mean, all of these territories, and there is Britain. But all of that is to say, hard times are hitting all of this territory. It's not merely Britain. Because you think your aqueducts and your baths are going to pot, there's R2. Because they don't have any engineers, Ostrogothic engineers who are setting up shop. It's like, gosh, we really need to work on those roads. Let's get some crew out there, some Ostrogoths. Well, I don't think we're going to do any kind of maintenance work because we fight. We are fighters and lovers. We are not engineers. Not that there's anything wrong with being an engineer, but I'm just saying that's not what your Gothics people do. Vandals and all of those. But all of that map will show you that all of these areas would now, and you say, well, what's left? Go east, folks, go east. You say, but aren't we speaking of the Byzantine Empire? Well, we call it the Roman Empire. Okay, so correct any people if you're out tonight who call it Byzantine, say, but that's not what was said at the time. They were Roman. I thought it was an interesting map, though, and it gives you an idea about where we're going next in terms of understanding the changing of the culture. We'll pick it up next time with the Angles and Saxons and the new world that's to come and give us England. So I look forward to seeing you then, okay? Thank you.